welcome you all to the first annual George Rose Retirement Dinner. I think at last count, George had 17 job offers. First of all, I'd like to introduce his family that's here. Of course, we all know Helen. His son, Brian, and his wife, Dee Dee Rose, and his aunt. And his daughter, Karen, and her husband, Richard Skank. I'm glad you all could make it. First of all, we're going to have Tom Gaddy up, and he's going to give us a brief tour of George's employment history.
I know that you're all waiting for the excitement, and believe me, there is excitement to come because we asked Marcy to be the master of ceremonies, and she's invited all of you to her wedding. If you don't find this exciting tonight, we can go to her wedding and have a great time. Is that okay, Tom? You got it all set up? All good? Okay, let me hurry on along. An important milestone happens with George on January the 31st, 1992. After almost 36 years of employment, he will walk out the door a free man. Want to go back over a little bit of George's history, and I'm going to hurry on along because I don't want this to take up much time. There are some of you who remember some of this. George started in Syracuse, July the 3rd, 1956, as a circuit design engineer. He reported in when auto travel reimbursement was 8 cents a mile, when engineering salaries were less than $6,000 a year, when his position guide was 15 pages long. He moved to Lynchburg shortly thereafter, and he has worked for A.C. Gunn, K.C. Plunder, and I may murder some of these names. Some of you will know them. Jerry Caius, A.C. Lapter, Olin Giles, Fred Mann, Ed Imke, Dave Brown, Craig Sikowski, Tom Gaddy, and Bob Canada. Quite a list. George has earned the respect of his peers, his managers, and his associates. He has distinguished his technical credibility with a PE license, with FCC licenses, with ham licenses. As a matter of fact, George was president of the Ham Club at Iowa State. I bet you didn't know I knew that. That was quite a few years ago. He has an undetermined number of patents. I was going to try to figure that out, and I couldn't determine it. Maybe Marcy knows. I don't know. He's our expert on pagers, voice guard systems, digital communication theory, EDAC simulcast systems. As a matter of fact, if I count correctly, George's expertise in the simulcast area will lead to over $70 million worth of sales in 1992 alone. I want to read you a little bit of the things that George planned to do when he decided that he was going to retire. He wrote a little note here that said, by mid-January, I will accomplish the following items. I will give all remaining voice guard files to Mike Corbett. I will give the keys to Johnson Mountain to Mike Corbett, as Tom Brown already has a set. I will transfer the collection of voice guard reference proms and files to Mike Corbett. I will keep my present office area, including the 286 PC and other general documentation and materials not referenced above, intact and further notice. I will continue to use the EGE engineering address for technical correspondence. Andy will keep a box under the table for mail or put it in the office while I'm not here. Now, I want to read these last two items. You tell me whether George is retiring or not. I will retain the engineering sample trunk high-band Ranger installed in my car, and the voice guard portables I presently possess until further notice. I will retain the Dialcom key card but will not use it until I return to active work. Now you tell me whether he plans to retire. Want to read a letter, a very short letter here. It says, Mr. George Rose of Engineering. Dear George, I'm sorry I cannot be here tonight to personally thank you and wish you all the best. I know others will note your many achievements for which we all appreciate. Your sustained high level of contribution through the years is an example we all admire and aspire to. Personally, it's been a great pleasure working with a knowledgeable professional who has the enthusiasm most often found only in you. Please enjoy the evening. I look forward to you as a continued friend. Steve Hicks. Steve and George Bath could not be here tonight. They both had to be in Paramus tonight. I have one other thing that I want to present to you, George. I want to give you this letter, but I want to present one other thing, and that is you are hereby authorized to remove from the premises and take ownership of the following pieces of equipment. Although the equipment has been determined to have no book or commercial value, you may be able to piece together some working units during your retirement.
Helen, I heard that it was 500 pounds worth, so. Thank you, Tom. Well, it's a little intimidating to try and do justice in honoring a man who's been called an institution, a genius, a walking encyclopedia, etc., etc. It goes on and on. So instead of trying to do that, we're just going to make fun of him instead. Will the cast please take your places? I'll talk while you load your camera. We'd like to introduce to you here George Rose. On a typical day at work, George has to wear many hats. If no one else knows, ask Professor George.
Welcome to my playroom. 4 days, 6 hours, 37 minutes. Or until it snows, whichever comes first. Key loaders. Now, some people are never satisfied. We have a key loader that has 1 out of 2 of the 56 possible keys. Cipher feedback, dead encryption standard, but some people are not satisfied. So what I've done here is I've developed 2 new modes for this key loader. Mode number 3 allows only 0 keys out of 256 to be accepted. Just look at the faces when they try to crack the code. They try everything and none of them work.
Could you tell me the optimal use and the potential advantage of using a pre-connected 3-inch line to a portable load unit?
Why, certainly, Dave. number one problem with security is never the hardware, it's always the people. The average price of a person is less than $5,000. So, mode 4 of the keyloader will allow the keyloader to transfer to the radio a random key. Every radio transfer is different and completely random.
Excuse me.
But,
All this got a problem inside. Scared him away.
I'm interested. I have a problem in mode and Saudi also.
You want to ask me a question?
Yes. How do I tell Helen about the harem?
George, are you serious, John?
Wait a minute. Hello? Rose? 400 millivolts. Keep the key. No. I don't care what somebody else tells you. Well, 3002 standard grade line. Bye. Yes?
I've got a customer, I agree. Richie.
I don't know if I can travel. It depends on what Helen says about the harem. I never get to go on pleasant trips. Okay, where's the irate customer?
Hey, George, can you tell me where the bathroom is?
Bearing 47 degrees west-northwest, range 52 feet, elevation 341 feet. You'll recognize the sign, it says marketing next to it. Rose, 400 millivolts, peak to peak. No, not RMS. You're not listening to me. Peak to peak. Bye. Oh, dear, oh, dear, dear. Well, I don't know when I'm going to get to tell you about my latest, most exciting project. It's called Spark Gap Simulcast. When we talk about wide area coverage, we're talking about wide area coverage. And across all the bands simultaneously. I've got it all designed. That's the easy part. Making it work is what's tough.
George, hey, having your shirt off has a problem. I need help. Please.
Hey, come on. Now.
Please. Please help me back. Your turn. George, get it. That's what it hurt.
lost our interference locating antenna. Oh, it's over here. Okay, start the helicopter. Tell them I'll be there. That interference signal, we'll really let them have it. And if that's not it, and the hardware is not smoking, all we need to do is cycle the power supply and we doesn't get these. Well,
How long do you have left?
7? Beg pardon? 7 hours and 51 minutes. SparkCap simulcast. We're not going to have system all faults. We're going to have all system faults. Yeah. 7 hours and 41 minutes. Oh, sorry, 8:05. Time for me to take the hat off. Oh. Oh. A demo? What do you mean you have a demo? What do you mean I have to have a demo? What happened to 2 weeks' notice? Who? They speak English? Well, they will when I'm done. Everybody out! I'm gonna clean the lab. We got a demo. Dust bunnies everywhere.
George, station's got a big problem. The 200-site simulcast system for Beijing. The full duplex telephone interconnect with multi-site voice guard. It's a mess. We need your help.
Reach the side.
We need your help. We need you over there. What does it say?
Miracles by White Valley.
With destiny in Beijing.
You know what
Need
these
your
are?
help.
All right, just a minute. You know what? Let's see, we need to adjust a little bit of delay here. And a few more microseconds. And let's see. Dual equalization. You know what they need? They need SparkCap simulcast. Okay. This is a serious problem. You really pushed it out, didn't you? Does somebody know the average magic words here? 2 hours and 10 minutes. Okay, that's working now. Okay. Now, China really needs that SparkCap simulcast. We're going to have a little trouble time accepting it over here, but fortunately our FCC is not in China. Okay. Oh. 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 The time's up.
Just one last question before we go.
You to charge it.
Let's see, we have a small presentation here. In the spirit of, due to his expertise in RF and voice guard and simulcast, all of which are considered to be black art. George. We'd like to dub you the Wizard of EGE. You'll have to come up and get a look at it afterwards. It's a Dick Culberson masterpiece. Okay, on to the roasting. I know. Our first speaker, roaster, will be Mr. Jeff Johnson.
If we may all get serious just for a moment. Tom uses it? I went to the School of Public Speaking. I know how to do this. How's that? What do you say? It gives me extreme pleasure to have such an honor as to represent tonight not only Jack Welch, but also George Bush. George had a prior speaking engagement tonight, but Jack wanted to be here. As a matter of fact, Jack is going to sit right on George's right side there. He spent the last week with George Bush, and well, he said he had a slight case of stomach virus, and I said, that's okay, I'll take care of it. Some of you here are civilians, are not aware of the new policy that GE has for retirement. Now, in the old days, they gave a gold watch, which was very appropriate at the time, but of course that's very much outdated. And so, to make a long story short, Jack Welch took all of the Harvard MBAs and put them in one room. And he said, you don't come out until you find a substitute for the gold watch. And they came up with the gold toilet seat, which was certainly the greatest accomplishment ever come out of Harvard. Do we have any Harvard graduates here? I like one of ours then. Well, anyway, but we've had some problems recently with mechanical engineers. It's so hard to find good help these days. We've had some problems recently. Jack Welch has had custom built in Syracuse a gold toilet seat for the retirees. But unfortunately, some band of desperados has managed to steal each and every gold toilet seat we've had so far and replace it with a cheap wooden spray-painted gold toilet seat. And I mentioned this to Jack, and he says, yes, I'm aware of that problem, and we certainly wouldn't want that to happen to George. So he says, you have any ideas? And I said, yeah, I have one that I think will work out here. If you will ship us a block of gold, about like a solid gold, says, we will have the guys here machine it in our shop. And, okay, yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. Well, you know, just like our typical just too late material system, we received it today at lunch. And so here I'm sitting with a block of gold at lunch and George's dinner tonight, you know, 6 hours away. So I went back to the shop there, and Hank and Steve and Norwood, and I said, guys, I got to have this machine by tonight. And they said, yeah, right. I said, I'll tell you, I'll make a deal. You can keep the chips you machine off of this, provided you get the machine by tonight. And of course, the guys said, okay. So anyway, has the Brinks truck arrived yet? friends. Set it right here to say, Marcy. Don't drop on her, though. George, if you would come up here. With his sincere thanks for all these years of good service, Jack Walsh wishes he presents.
Thank you, Joe. And next we have Dave Helfrich. Oh, this isn't going to work for Dave.
My name is Dave Helfrich. She does a very good job. I've only been with GE for about 2 years. I'm a customer, an ex-customer, and I had great pleasure in meeting George. Well, we had some problems with the system. It was a simulcast system, as you can obviously tell by the impersonations and the certain situations that occurred. So when George was assigned the project, he always wanted to stay in the jail. He couldn't figure out why, except for it had to do with some type of heroism or something. You ought to see him though in the jail. They're pretty bad. Well, we finally got him out of the jail, and we took him back to the RF site. Now, it's a very small building, and he says, this can't be happening. But it is. We're getting some noise on the system. It can't happen. It's not our system. It's not our problem. No, George, sorry. Hey, we've got to get this taken care of. We have deputies' lives at stake. All they want to do is go back to the harems. So anyhow, we'd been working on this thing for a while. We've been using helicopters, and we've been using some aerial surveillance. We've been using directional antennas. The only thing that we didn't really try was this piece of equipment. As you can obviously see, it's a little bit difficult to fit on a portable radio. But using George's ingenuity, we were able to. You ought to see the vehicle that was carried around in, though. Needless to say, his biggest regret about finding the signal was that he never had the opportunity to fly in the helicopter. But he was land-based. Couldn't help that. Anyhow, as we went on, we kept finding these signals. We'd have this directional antenna, and we'd have a little CV, or a scanner, and we kept looking for this signal. We'd run over to one corner. We had this police car with lights and sirens. We had to turn them on and turn the lights on for him, and something about it. We're not sure what it was. And he had to wear the hat. He had to play with the siren. George, get your hands off. Take your hands off. Stop, George. You're waking the neighborhood. You know how those kids are. We thought it was his second child, and that was his third child, fourth child. So anyhow, we were chasing this signal around, and I think he did it intentionally so he could play more and more with the antenna on the siren. George, get your hands off the antenna. Get your hands off the siren. Well, we finally did find it. Turned out to be his favorite friend, which happens to be Motorola. They had some problems in their trunk system that would cause the interference. But needless to say, it would have normally taken about 2 days to have found everything. But because he had to play with the siren, we kept it going for weeks and weeks at a time. But Pasco's system is probably one of the best ones. I'll get serious just for a quick minute. Simulcast system is wonderful. I was blessed to be able to work with George for such a long time. He was down there for a week or so, even trying to keep his hands off the siren. But I was blessed to work with him. And then when I was hired here in Lynchburg, one of the most neatest things was being able to go up to George's office and ask him questions, and it's exactly what Tom did. I mean, he got up on the soapbox, and I learned a ton. I realized that the passcode system was developed by George while it was being installed by George and Tom. And they said it was a proven product. Well, the proof comes in the future, and now we know. But it is great. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I will definitely miss him, and I'm glad that he's keeping his Valcom, so at least we can give him a call in church at his card. But in all seriousness, I've had a great time working with him, and I sure hope it continues in the future too. Thanks.
The matter is that Lieutenant Helfrich here said he was going to put me in jail, so I didn't like it to there.
And now I'd like to invite the distinguished Sparky Sherman to come forward.
That one really is heavy. I'll explain a little bit about that later. Well, I'm going to be a little bit on the serious side. We've had a lot of fun punting at George. And, there's a lot of old timers here who haven't been with business for years, and they knew George back when they worked at GE. I see Dick Musing back there, Jerry Dellison, some of the other guys, Bob Martin and company, all worked for George, with George over the years. And you can see the respect that George has earned from all the engineering community. But you know, a respect like that, we all think George is a genius. Well, perhaps he is. He's a lot smarter than I am. But everybody here is frankly awed at George. Now the question is, why is everybody awed at George? Nobody argues with George. I started checking around, and a few statements were said. I asked Jim Sears about George, and Jim says George is an engineer's engineer. Well, that's a very good statement. One of the things I noticed about George, as he worked around GE, learned a lot of things, but he didn't keep that knowledge to himself. Probably one of the best things I can say about George is all the courses he's taught at GE over the years. It's something that we have a tendency to forget about, but George is probably one of the best trainers of other engineers that's in the business. Well, I sat here thinking, how can I take the mystique out of George? And George is not God. George is an average person like you and I. But how did George get to be where he is today? You notice when George started working on simulcast systems, he had a longing for those mountains. He never complained about going climbing up on mountains. You ever wonder why that was? Things like microwave, the microwave links between the sites, George picked that up. How did George learn all that stuff? If it comes to telephone interconnect, George is an expert. How did he learn that too? I started thinking, what is it about George that makes George George? Okay. Well, perhaps some of it's in his background. So I did what Tom Gaddy did. I got out his folder and I started studying, what is George? And one thing I discovered about George is George, from the word go, has been a systems guy. And for those people who haven't been with the business for a few years, the focus of our business has really changed over the past 3 or 4 years. 10, 20 years ago, we used to be designing product. Today, we design systems, and George is a systems engineer. And that's really true. From get-go, George has really dealt in systems. So I want to tell you, how does a systems engineer gain all this experience? George, come up here if you will, please. George is Mr. Systems, okay? Now, system knowledge, he just doesn't acquire overnight. You learn it with time, okay? So I went back and did what Tom Gaddy did, okay?
And what is it that George, his first project, tropospheric scatter. You ever think of that? This is 400 megahertz single sideband gear, where he's communicating about bouncing RF energy across the ionosphere from one place to another. Amazing. That was his first job.
FRC 47.
There you go. Not too many people realize that, okay? And then, back to this business, we had a product when I first joined GE. It was called TPL. Now, TPL stood for something. Do you remember what it stood for? Toilet paper line, right. TPL probably got one of the worst reputations in the business there's ever been. But George, bless his heart, managed to sell or put a system in, Titan 2. Could you believe that? All based upon TPL, and the customer was happy with it too.
Figured out how to build right.
Right. And then, George, this one here, you got to explain to me. I saw this, and I don't know what Echo Fox is.
That was the 400 meg air-to-ground system for the White House Communications Agency. It's an encrypted system, my first exposure to it with NSA. This was 25 years ago. So when the president was flying around in his Electra, that he could talk back encrypted all over the country. And that was the system.
Amazing, isn't it? The softbox. George just tells it like it is. The next thing is something that never took place, but it could have taken place.
5 years too soon.
5 years too soon. That was Tradar. Anybody know what Tradar was?
Yeah.
Jim Williams?
It was a mechanical device for
J.C. Penney. Right. It was a way to, I guess, gather all the data information from cash registers and put it all in a central database. But it was a big system, got past proposal, and never quite came. But, this is kind of some of George's background. And this, believe it or not, was before he joined Land Mobile Radio. Can you believe that? George, for his first part of his first part of his career at GE, was part of the telecommunications products department. And he really didn't join Land Mobile Radio back until 1973. So all this was the background. Now, this is about the time I met George. All this other stuff I don't know anything about, but I met George back in the early 1970s because of something else he was doing outside of work. And this was Mars. Anybody know what Mars is? Well, this is where this guy learned to love mountaintops. It turns out that George put up a repeater system on top of Candler's Mountain. And Lynchburg was one of the vital links between Richmond and Whitfield, Stanton, for a Mars FM repeater system. We had a repeater system statewide. And George maintained the local repeater system on top of Candler's Mountain for years and years. And that's where I first met George. Now, Mars is really a great organization. Through George, some of us locals got all kind of goodies. Every once in a while, the big box would come up, and the military people would give us all this stuff. I mean, we get some real neat stuff. The trouble is, how do you get rid of this stuff? I mean, have you ever seen? We were in teletype those days. Have you ever seen a Model 19 teletype machine? George, you're safe. It won't fit in that box. I mean, a Model 19 teletype machine is about yay big, and it weighs about 250 pounds. And I had one of those things in my basement for about 10 years before I figured out how to get rid of it. But George, I happened to be cleaning out my basement the other day, and I had this leftover piece of gear that I just have to get rid of. So I'm going to turn to you and let you get rid of it for me.
Thank you. Thank you. A real live vocal.
Now, how many people recognize this? Okay. For those people who don't recognize it, let me tell you, this is a radio that put GE into business. This is a Progress Line Mobile. This is back in the 1950s, 60 time frame. You can look at it afterwards. I mean, this is complete. This is working. The last time I turned it on, about 10 years ago, I wouldn't turn it on today. It'd probably blow up, but it was working. Pardon? I don't know. But, I mean, all this stuff we're talking about now is way back in time. This is, BC. This is before computers, This stuff is before transistors. But, George, I want you to get rid of this stuff. I mean, one thing about Mars, they gave you all this equipment, and they had all kind of strings attached. You couldn't sell it. You had to just give it away. George, if you will, you can get away for me, okay? So, George,
Take a bit.
it probably belongs in a museum somewhere. Well, George started his career at GE back in Land Mobile Radio back in 1973. And his first project I can think of was frequency synthesizers. Now, who looks at George and thinks of frequency synthesizers? I certainly don't. But it kind of explains why he knows all about modulation things when it comes to synthesizer designs. Next project George worked on is probably because his experience with these things was a 1/4 kilowatt transmitter. Now those things had tubes on them. I mean, they had voltages in there which would bite. And George was one of the few guys who knew how to work on it. You stick one hand behind your back and one hand inside, and this is the only safe way to work on those things.
Do you understand what Ola Giles' conversation was with me on that?
No.
He called me into the office and said, "You're a ham, aren't you?" "Yeah." "You have a rig you're running?" "Collins KWS-1. "How much voltage does it have in it?" "About 2,000 volts." He says, "Fine, I'd like you to work on the PA, because you probably are one of the few who won't kill yourself." That's true.
So we add a little bit more experience to this young man, George Rose. It's 800 and 900 megahertz frequency synthesizers. Don't think about that. We forgot a few things back there. I mean, back in the old days. I forgot this one. George, you can tell us about these video cable amplifiers?
Oh, yeah. Not a long ways. Every picture for about 15 years that came out of Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral, whatever you choose to call the place, came through at least one hop of video cable equipment built here in Lynchburg. The object of that was to provide over a 10-mile maximum length cable hop the transmission characteristics equal to a BNC through adapter. Frequency response was flat from 10 hertz to 10 megahertz, plus or minus a half a tenth of a dB. Boy, did we have fun teaching the factory how to measure that. Phase or group delay. I'm sure everyone teaching the factory how to measure it.
Okay.
Three companies out of business.
You forgot the soapbox, March.
To ask.
Right. The next thing you want to mention about George, I'm going to ask Mark Cheyenne to come on.
Uh-oh. Can I run now?
Well, I've ended up in cellular, but I did spend quite a bit of time upstairs in mobile. And I did have the fortune to work on the very end of one of these products. And George is lucky these all fit in an envelope. It's not near the progress line like some. Many of you may not know that GE really was one of the instrumental companies in creating the paging business. And when I came in '79, the product that we had was the AHO page. This was a technically superior product. I hear you can throw it out of a second-story window.
Oh,
It still worked well. And, the other thing is one thing in Steve Dix's letter, he said that George always had the enthusiasm of a youngster. And I think one way you keep the enthusiasm is you keep learning. And these next two products, George learned some very important things. The first of these, not many people have seen one of these. This is the GMP2. One. I stand corrected. But anyway, this is one of the products that GE was doing to take over the pager market. George did learn one very important thing, and that is about the American legal system. Because this product got all the way to fruition, and we found it didn't bridge the patent that Motorola had. And this one didn't quite make it. Also, I'd also like to mention the reason I have these samples is we beat George to the junk box one afternoon. Pick these out. The next thing they got. But everything comes home to roost. This next one is one that I actually had a little bit to do with, and this is a POXAG pager. Now here again, GE demonstrated their technical expertise. This was a paging system that was created by the British Postal Service, and our product was actually the first one that was submitted to the British Postal Service for approval. And I was called upon because I happened to be in Atlanta visiting some customers to help show this. The first samples we had to a customer. And this is where George learned another important lesson, which is the American economic system. It turns out that you can't sell a pager this big that costs, let's say, X dollar in parts against somebody who has one about that big that costs less than ours did in parts. So this one didn't quite make it. Also, what is POXAG? POXAG was created by the British Postal System as having almost no meaning, so it would never be eliminated.
It wasn't
right.
Post office signaling advisory.
There are many of these questions you will never see asked on Jeopardy. And also, I think Sparky knows some more things about GMP pagers than I do. I was down in Mobile working on other programs that didn't make like Starcom and 900.
Well, you can see what, George, where are you going? Put on your star, boy. You see, what's happened here is George has added yet a couple more projects to his expertise. Pagers, that represents about 6 years worth, including POXAG, okay, which is one of the last ones. POXAG turned out to be pretty good because POXAG taught George a lot about low-frequency data modulation techniques, something that's spun right over into the voice guard in 16 plus. Another interesting thing that George was involved in during the pager program was custom IC development. And Dick Patch is not here, so I can't mention that. But I do want to give George this thing. I mean, these are always interesting little mementos. It says open display release, okay. Here's a sample of some of the stuff that George was working on back in those days. This is actually a DTD wafer. A lot of people here have worked on it. I see Jim Lovler smiling, and a few people, Bob Martin probably knows what it is. But this is a real live DTD wafer with solder bumps and everything attached. And George, this is just one of the circuits you created in your expertise as a pager. You can take that with you too. Well, after the paging thing, George just got into all kinds of miscellaneous system things. He became the sort of the systems guru in personal paging. He did a lot of channel guard decoders and looked at other types of decoders. And one of the next things he got into was scramblers. But it wasn't digital, it was the old Raycal ADA scrambler. Okay, George worked on that for quite a while and brought that to party. And he finally got into some of the stuff that we know him for today. That's a good old voice guard.
You know the biggest problem that Raycal scrambler job was translating the English manuals to American.
Right. And we've all heard about George's simulcast. And there's been a few other things around here that George has worked on we haven't mentioned. He was actually part of a company group who worked with the FCC coming up with some information about satellites. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know he represented the company and made some reports to the FCC on satellite transmissions. And George has always been active working with the FCC and all the EIA committees, so we add that to his expertise. Back in his old days, we forgot a couple things. He even worked on core memories. Anybody know what a core memory is? Now George can lecture you. George can lecture you on core memories. He spent about 2 years of his life working on core memories.
You call these other things witchcraft.
Right. Well, The last thing that he's starting to play with, this is the last going away one. This is Voice Guard 2. So I think the message I'm trying to leave you, what is the man? Okay, the man is a sum total of all his experiences. He's had a bunch of experiences at GE, and as a result of each experience, he's gained a lot. He's gained a lot of expertise and a lot of respect and a lot of friends. He's starting a new experience now. He called retirement. Okay, but you all heard that George just can't give it up. George is coming back. And what's he going to work on next, and what's he going to bring to the company? Well, your guess is as good as mine, but I'm sure he's going to make one hell of a contribution. Thank you, George.
Here, give him this while you're running away. Thank you, Sparky and Mark. I hope you brought a truck, George. Because you realize all of this on the stage is yours also. Next, I'd like to read a letter from an old friend of George's who couldn't be here tonight, Mr. Max Grigg. Dear George, congratulations on your well-deserved retirement from General Electric and Ericsson-GE Mobile Communications Incorporated. The timing for our EDAX staging in Lynchburg is such that I will not be able to attend your retirement party this month. However, I did want to write and wish you and your family the very best of health, happiness, and success in your retirement. I also want to thank you for the numerous times I have called upon your vast experience and knowledge to help me resolve the customer problems. Remember the Phoenix PD Voice Guard system? Me too. You were the savior and salvation of that order. I'm sure the word retirement will hardly apply to you, as you will continue to go to your remote laboratory to, quote, tinker with your new toys, such as the new generation digital radios. How about considering being the site manager for our EDAX system? Make that 18 job offers. Discuss it with Dan Wells. Maybe it will be ready to install in the cool month of July. This is in Phoenix. Don't forget us, George, and if you are out this way, please visit. We still have the motorhome, and it makes a very nice guest cottage. Best personal regards, Max Grigg. Next, we have a little something here that Mr. Harold Hudson put together for us. It says, Newsmaker, George Rose, amateur, inventor, team member, tour guide, long timer. And you should come up and look at this afterwards. There's some great pictures here of George. This one's October 31st, 1967. It's really cute. You got to come up and see it. And no, you have to come up for this one, George. You can look at that later. This is your one serious present. Here's your card that goes with it. This is from all of us at Ericsson-GE, so that you will remember how much we are going to miss you. That's right. You have to open it right there.
This is the real gold.
That's the real one.
I guess it's safe if I break the ribbon.
I think so. I don't know. How big was that, Harold? Daryl wrapped it, by the way, so you can't get into it.
Okay. Actually, I have one of my own. Very nice.
Just an empty box, right?
Now there's what it says. You don't see the moment, in fact it is. Figure out how to get into it.
We've all been into it. We've been playing with it. So we know it opens up.
a definite step up from my old HP 65. Oh, yes, beautiful. Thank you all.
This is a card from all of us, and this is a card from George Bath, who couldn't be here tonight.
Thank you.
And you can stay here. I know, get your notes, yeah. Before I invite George to speak, or I should say to rebut, in all seriousness, I'd like to publicly thank George for taking me from a very green, very right out of the pocket college graduate engineer and teaching me what it was to be an engineer. And as I think it was Dave Brown that said, turned her into, quote, somebody who's at least worth something.
We work together on a number of programs.
So have I. And I consider George the finest example of excellence in engineering, and I think we're all very fortunate to have had him as an example and a teacher.
Well, I certainly want to thank all of you. I'm overwhelmed at the turnout. I really appreciate it. I do want to say thanks, especially to my wife Helen, for kind of giving me the opportunity to be what I am. In terms of acknowledgments, I'd like to say, yes, go ahead and glare at me, Margaret. Margaret Falwell and Faye McConville have done a wonderful job of setting this up, and I certainly appreciate it. And I want to also thank all the presenters. Now, as has been pointed out, my career with GE and General Electric has taken me into a number of interesting places. I've been in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology moon mounts and troposcatter sites at Millstone Hill. I've been in half of the Type 2 missile sites in Arizona, Kansas, and Arkansas. I've seen more of the underside of the Arizona desert than most people have seen the top side. I've been in a number of hardened underground comm centers all over the East. I've been in, on top of, or underneath a dozen or so assorted jails around the country. Most recently, I was under the Martinsville jail for about a day. Lou, I think you were there with me. That's right, we were under the jail. I've also been, as Jeff will appreciate, inside the infamous NSA black building up at Fort Meade, where they even escort you to the John. Number of places, been very interesting. However, my travel desires and management's desires never seem to coincide. And you can guess whose plans went out. I'm the one they sent to Fargo, North Dakota in February when it was 35 below zero. And I'm also one of them they sent to Phoenix in August at 118 degrees. Wasn't it, Marcy? Yeah, right. You betcha. You know, one time I asked Tom why he always sent me on trips to mad customers and never sent me to any of these boondoggle trips like conventions and the like. And his answer was, it's because I could pacify these customers so well. So I asked him, well, if I start screwing up, then will I get to take the boondoggle trips too? Well, he never answered that, and I guess I'll never find out. Yeah, right. But I can't get you to pay for them. 2 years ago, I gave notice of my intent to retire, January '92, as was pointed out earlier, at the end of the month of the first snowstorm, whichever came first. Unfortunately, Mother Nature is not cooperating, and I'm going to have to work all the way through till end of Friday. So that's the way I'm. You know, win a few, lose a few. And to Marcy Tucker, soon to be Brown. During the time that my daughter, Karen here, was at Tech, Marcy and I were working on a program together called Voice Guard Voter Project. Since Marcy had graduated from UVA, I made a great effort to sing the praises of Tech, talk about all the bricks that I was helping buy over there, and even cast an occasional aspersion toward Charlottesville. Boy, did I ever catch it when she found out I had graduate school credit for UVA. And then here just a few weeks ago, 3 of us went over to Richmond. Tom Brown, Marcy, and I went over. We had some problems over there, some things to check out. Hanover County is a simulcast system that's going in, and Tom and I went over to do the appropriate blessings and all to that system. Richmond PD was having a problem, so we turned Marcy loose on Richmond. We figured there wasn't any problem with Marcy, but we wondered if Richmond PD was up to it. But it seems they all survived. And to Tom, I hate people with body metabolism like yours. You can eat like a horse and never, even if you put on weight, it never shows. I'm one of these types that goes into Krispy Kreme, takes a deep breath, and gains 5 pounds. It shows. Dave, you mentioned the RFI hunting down there. It wasn't quite like you put it, but it was close. However, don't forget, you still owe me a cream puff. Well, you've been promising me that for 2 years. He said, yeah, right. It seems his mother runs a restaurant down there. I'm not sure exactly what the name of it is, but anyway, it's a nice facility down there. And she serves, supposedly, the best cream puffs in Newport Richey. Well, you had... Well, I know, right. Yeah, really. Friends like you all who needs enemies. Anyway, you still owe me a cream puff. You promised to take me over there, and then we went out hunting RFI instead. And I went home the next night, so I never got one. It's all hearsay. And I really want to hear. Okay. I hope it's not still there. That was 2.5 years ago. Okay. Now, Vandergraaf, J.J. Vandergraaf. I have worked with J.J. for nigh on to the 30 years plus. I'm not sure exactly when our paths crossed, but it's been a long time. But when we were in telecom together, J.J. really worked up some works of art. The circuitry, as he would breadboard it, he would string a wire from the chandelier all the way down to the bench, and then grow a circuit around it. The most beautiful works of art you ever saw. To change a value, he would delve into the heart of that thing with all of the depth of a brain surgeon. Now, whenever you put it on a printed circuit board, the circuit strays and all each alive and never work the same way. But suspended out here, if we could encapsulate it in epoxy, we'd have had some of the best circuits globally. Unfortunately, when he came to mobile, he started working with RF and found out that you couldn't leave the leads quite so long, so he had to change his approach. But JJ, I wish I had some of those works of art. They were gorgeous. Now, Fred Mann. Somebody gave me a brand new 833A triode tube the other day. In case you don't remember, an 833 is about the size of a gallon milk jug. It's good for a kilowatt plus. And I'm really more into VHF and microwave. As I pointed out earlier, I was trained as a plumber. If you're interested, if you're a new driver for your 20-meter rig, see me later for more. Yeah, let's try it. I'm sorry about that. I tried. And Mike Gorbat. Mike Gorbat has inherited all of my problems, and I wish you luck. I feel for you, but I can't quite reach you. And Harold Hudson. Last but not least, what can I possibly say that hasn't already been said before? Harold, I love you like a brother. I treat you like one too. Just to finish this up, I want to say that I have enjoyed my career with GE and EGE. I really mean I have enjoyed it. A few rough spots here and there, but it's been fun. I had it all to do over again. with a few minor exceptions, I do the same thing. And I certainly have enjoyed my association with all of you. I'm going to disappear for several months, and then I'm planning on not being back half-time on a contractor consulting basis. As I discussed with Tom, I wanted to work half-time to help finance the traveling. I'd like to do the other half of the time with wife help. However, my daughter Karen here has reserved the first half of the month of June for very obvious reasons. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you all very much for coming. I'm sure you'd like to come up and see the goodies before you leave. And by the way, I just realized something. When I came to interview here, I had an interview with Sparky. And one of the questions he asked me was, "Are you a ham radio operator?" And now I know whose fault that is. Thank you all for coming. Drive safely home, please.
Go ahead, tell him now.
He'll be back. Happy retirement, George. We're gonna miss you. Yes, George, we're gonna miss George.
He deserves it. Now it's going, right? I'm glad to see George retiring. He deserves to retire. He's a great guy, and hope he spends a lot of time with his grandchildren.
George, if I can't get that hard disk working, I'll give you a call next week. I hope you'll be available. Otherwise, have good luck in your retirement, and we expect to see you back. Join us and visit, etc. Have fun.
I'll nod for you. Yeah, George is here. You're live. You've been live for about the past 2 minutes.
FRC 47. I think you remember that. George, I'd like to set up an appointment with you. How about March 15th? 2 o'clock. You know I have to get in line in this.
Give us some comments for George. He beat you, Hank.
That's the way it goes. Some of us are a little too slow.
And just think, you had your perfect opportunity to take the lead chair, too. You had the perfect opportunity to get that lead chair in Gaddy's office.
And I let that go too, but I left it in honor of George. And I think it should be left unoccupied from now on. And besides, it has a strange shape, and nobody would be comfortable with it.
George is partially responsible for my career in integrated circuits because we did so many of them on that pager that we slipped over into the IC on that.
Don't get mad at you, Joe. I'll go fast. Take care, Joe. I hope you enjoy your time.
George, I appreciate all the assistance you give me all the time. You have always returned. I'm surprised you didn't get to make speak.
How you doing? Fine. Where's your next one going to be?
I couldn't get out of All I can say is George introduced me to transistors. I came out of school knowing nothing about transistors. He brainwashed me and made me what I am today. Good luck, George.
Thank you much for all the help you gave us. I really appreciate it. I don't know how come you put up with it sometimes. You got yourselves in our own trouble, but you got us out. Thanks a lot.
It has to be.
I'm supposed to be. They crack a smile and she's on their case.
George is just a super guy, and we're sure, everybody's sure going to miss him. We're glad he's being here in the community because we want to see more of it, at least now.
Mr. Systems.
That's a 50 water. Good for we save it for parts we need to replace the hospital station. Good luck, George.
And a parting shot, George. Remember all those dinners I promised you? Hey, when you retired, you lost every one of them.